So the more and more we invoke peace in the universe and in your own hearts, it will be good for individual and for the collective. Om Jau Shanti Antarikshagum Shanti Prithvi Shanti Oshadhaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishve Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace be in the heavens, peace be in the interstellar space, peace be on the earth, peace be on all the herbs and plants, peace be on the trees and all the vegetation, peace be in ourselves, peace be in the Supreme Being, and let that supreme peace come to me. Let peace and peace prevail and pervade everywhere. Om, peace, peace, peace. So we continue from where we left off yesterday. In quest of unity and unification, Vedantic and scientific perspectives. All of us are always in quest of unity. We do not want to be divided, although sometimes the little ego asserts itself and says, I have to be separate and I want my rights and I want to assert myself. The I and the me keep asserting all the time, but at the back of all this is a deep quest in the human heart to find unity so that we can get peace. More and more, because of the globalization, which is not only in the air, economically and socially, but also in the hearts of men and women, we are realizing that we can't live in isolation anymore. Every one of us is interconnected with every other being in the universe. This interconnectedness, which is not only an emotional feeling, but a philosophical truth and a psychological necessity, is what makes us live a meaningful living. So we are not isolated human beings. That gives you security. We seek security in so many things. The greatest security that can come to a human being is that he is interconnected with the entire universe. I was talking yesterday about the Einstein's general theory of relativity. This is a theory of gravitation, as you know. Einstein gave an entirely different perspective to gravitation. We have studied in school books that gravitation means two particles get attracted to each other because of a gravitational force. Now the question is there a mysterious pull between two particles? Where did that pull come from? What is the explanation for the existence of this kind of a pull? As I mentioned yesterday, Swami Vivekananda, in his famous lecture on the reason and religion, says that one of the fundamental criteria by which secular sciences are scrutinized and tested is that the explanation of something has to come from within and not from without. You don't say there is a peculiar tug in that small particle, and this particle is able to attract the other particle somehow mysteriously. This doesn't appear to be very scientific, because you should know what is the source of this force. Now the explanation of this was given by Einstein in a totally different way, by saying it is not because of the particle possessing a mysterious force called gravity, but because the very property of space-time, the curvature of space-time, makes it appear that two particles are coming together, not because each particle is pulling the other particle, because of the very structure of the space-time which is curved. This is very important, a revolutionary concept by which Einstein could explain some of the most mysterious phenomena, like the bending of a ray of light in very strong gravitational fields, redshift and so on. there is a beautiful small book by Bertrand Russell called the ABC of Relativity. Those of you who want to have some basic idea of relativity will find this book very enjoyable and readable, very lucidly written book. There he gives an image. There is a mountain at the top of which there is a beacon light, and so many travelers with small lanterns in their hands are trying to reach that beacon. It's absolutely dark. An onlooker from space will see small lights bending slowly around this beacon and approaching that beacon. So they will say there is a mysterious pull which this beacon at the top is exercising on these small lights, and which is explained as a gravitational pull in the case of planets. But when the sunlight dawns and you see in broad daylight, this has nothing to do with either the beacon or the light, small light, but because the path which they are taking is curved and they are moving round and round and round. Bertrand Russell says in this example, in this imagery, the beacon at the top represents the sun, all the various small lanterns represent the various planets, and the path they take is the orbit of these various planets, and the coming of the sun, the daylight, is the advent of Einstein. Because he made it possible for us to see the whole thing in a totally different perspective. So this is the theory of gravitation, and interestingly, Einstein owed his theory of gravitation to a philosophical principle. As I mentioned yesterday, most of the scientific discoveries are based on a fundamental philosophy of existence. We can't live without philosophy, not the philosophy which we study in books, but a philosophy of life. Every being in the universe, every particle, every ant or an insect or a plant has its own philosophy of existence and life. Every one of us has a philosophy. You can't live without a philosophy of life. What the German word Weltanschauung is the German word, which is called a world vision, a philosophy of existence and life, by which you regulate your life and existence. Einstein's theory of gravitation was based upon a principle called the Mach's principle. Mach was a great German philosopher who said the entire universe, even physically, is an interconnected whole. Interestingly, Swami Vivekananda mentions this in 1897 in the lectures in the Colombo to Almorach, when he gave a series of lectures when he came back to India after his triumphal conquest of the Western world by the spirituality of the East. In his lecture in Madras, he said, I need not tell you, you graduates of the presidency of Madras, that how physically science has proved that the world is one, long before Einstein gave his theory of relativity in 1925. Swami Vivekananda somehow knew this is in the air, this is coming. Even physically we are one. Mach's principle is sometimes described in a very funny language as follows. If I lift a little finger, I disturb a star out there. Because that star out there, millions of light years far away from me, is interconnected with me as a huge ocean of matter. All of us, my body, your body, all that you see in the universe are all whirlpools in this infinite, vast, boundless ocean of matter. All of us are interconnected through this ocean as small bubbles and waves. So psychologically, we have proved that we are one. There is a cosmic mind of which all our minds are little parts. Wolfgang Pauli was a very famous physicist, was a genius of a physicist. At a very young age, he discovered made some of the most profound discoveries in physics. His exclusion principle, most of you might have known. Spin statistics theorem, some of the very profound discoveries in physics owe their origin to Pauli. And you must have also heard about a great psychologist called Carl Jung. He was a disciple in the contemporary of Freud, Sigmund Freud, but he broke away from him to enlarge his vision. Freud said the unconscious in the human mind is the source of all power in terms of libido. But Carl Jung said it is not only the libido, but the source of all power is in the unconscious. And he brought out a very interesting concept called the collective unconscious. Just like you have an unconscious, I have an unconscious, individually, the entire country, the entire world has a collective unconscious. What we call in Sanskrit as a Bharatatma. This word is very often used. The Bharatatma means there is a collective unconscious of the country called Bharat, which is not an individual consciousness, but the entire country has a psychological, deep-rooted unconscious which pulsates with every thought and emotion of every Indian who has lived thousands of years ago, living now, and will come later. That means the collective unconscious of the entire nation affects the unconscious of each one of us as individuals. Similarly, there could be a collective unconscious of the entire universe, of the world. So this is a very important concept which has gained currency in the modern psychology, which means that there is a collective existence of which our individual existences are only parts. It follows therefore that every one of us is physically connected to everybody else, psychologically connected to everyone else, and Vedanta proved long ago, thousands of years ago, spiritually we are connected, we are one. There is one supreme spirit of which our individual spirits are parts. There is one supreme collective cosmic mind of which our individual minds are parts, and there is a supreme collective ocean of matter of which our individual bodies and individual pieces of matter are parts. This is not a theory anymore. This is an accepted, verified, verifiable, and well-known, proven fact of both science as well as Vedanta. Only Vedanta talks about it at the spiritual level, psychology talks about it at the mental level, and physical sciences talk about it at the physical level. Swami Vivekananda, in his famous lecture called The Paper on Hinduism, which he read at the Parliament of Religions in Chicago in September 1893, this was one of the very few writings which he actually sat down and wrote. Vivekananda was so extraordinarily dynamic, and he was called a cyclonic monk. He wrote very little, he spoke so much, but he had no time to sit down and write. This is one of the very few papers which he actually wrote. It's a very remarkable paper. Those of you who are interested, it is there in the first volume of Swami Vivekananda's complete works. Paper on Hinduism. If you want to know the Sanatana Dharma, the religion of the Rishis and the Vedas in a nutshell, you can just read this paper to know the essence of what Hinduism and Sanatana Dharma actually is. There he talks about monism or unity, oneness. He talks about three levels of monism. One is the materialistic monism, the other is the philosophical monism, third is the spiritual monism. This is a very peculiar idea because most of the acharyas of the Vedanta, Shankaracharya and others, have talked about spiritual unity of mankind. Atma Brahma Aikya it is called. My spirit is part of the cosmic spirit. All of us are only manifestations of that one supreme spirit. But what Vivekananda did was to emphasize that this does not apply only to the spiritual realm, but also to the mental and the physical fields. The materialistic monism is the oneness of all matter, which has been proved in the modern day by the theory of relativity and so many other theories of physics. The philosophical monism is the monism at the mental level, which has been proved by mental sciences and psychology, and the spiritual monism has been proved long ago by Vedanta. So you can think of it, Vedantic theory, as being applied at three levels. All of us live in three levels. We live at the physical level, we need food, we need drink, we need money, and we need a place to live in, we need clothes to wear. So we have certain fundamental organic physical necessities to satisfy. That's the first step. But if they are satisfied, even then you are not fully satisfied. You need something more. You need food for the mind. You want elevating thoughts. You want to study. You want to be educated. You want to inquire. You want to investigate. You want to probe deep into the mysteries of nature. So education is all about cultivating the mind. And therefore, we live at the mental level. And those who live at the mental level most of the time are not so much worried about food and other physical necessities, so much as a person who lives at the physical level only. You know the stories about great scientists. I told you the story yesterday of Professor Wiener, the great mathematician, who did not know where his house has been changed. He was so much absorbed in his thought. And the story of Isaac Newton is well known. Newton had invited one of his friends for dinner. His friend knew anyway that Newton will be absorbed in his laboratory, and he came and saw Newton so absorbed that he didn't disturb him, went to the dining table and then ate his food and walked away. After a long time, Newton remembered, oh, I called my friend, where is he? He came rushing to the dining table and saw a plate from which somebody had eaten. Then he said, oh, what a fool I am. I don't even remember that I have eaten already. And then walked back. You may think it's a story, but there are such people. In Vedanta, there is a very famous sage called Vachaspati Mishra. He was called Sarvatantra Swatantra. That means he was well versed in almost all the darshanas of India. Sankhya, Vedanta, Yoga. He was absolutely well versed, and he has written commentaries on each of these darshanas. When he was composing his famous commentary on Shankara's magnum opus called the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, the Bhashya or the commentary on Brahma Sutras, which is called the Vedanta Darshana. So Vachaspati Mishra was so absorbed in his writing, he was so deeply absorbed, he did not know how the sun was rising or setting, whether he had eaten, whether he had slept, whether he had taken food. And you know, in those days, electricity was not available, so in an oil lamp, he was slowly writing his book. And when the oil was getting less and less, somebody was constantly supplying oil there. Suddenly, when he was very tired and found that the lamp was almost burning out, he saw an old woman come and pour oil there. He looked at her and remembered that several years ago he got married. And this woman had been silently serving her husband without even asking why he is neglecting her. You may understand the story in any way you like, whether it was neglect of women, whether it was gender discrimination and all that we talk about now. But the story is that she was so happy that the husband was so deeply absorbed in that book, she quietly went on serving him from a distance. Then he felt so unhappy and guilty, and the name which he gave for that monumental work which he produced was Bhamati, the name of his wife, and said, Bhamati, you will become immortal and remembered by generation after generation as bearing the name of this great book. It is called Bhamati Tika, commentary on the Brahma Sutra Bhashya of Shankaracharya. Why I am mentioning this is because there are such people even now. There are people who are so much absorbed, they do not even know whether they have satisfied their physical necessities. So when you go to a mental plane and live in that plane and are habituated to live in that plane and derive great joy from that plane, those are musicians, those are great artists. You can't confine them to a routine and then say from 10 to 10:30 you should do this, from 14 from this hour to, so there will be so much absorbed you do not know really what happens. At that level, your physical necessities are to be satisfied just because you have to live and eat, that's all. And then when you still rise to the spiritual level, even your mental thought ceases. It is possible. sages and saints have proved that your mind comes to a stop. Aldous Huxley wrote a famous book, Time Must Have a Stop. Mind is time. What is time? There is a famous definition given by Swami Ramakrishna Order, one of the brother disciples of Swami Vivekananda and a direct monastic disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. He was a mathematician and his hobby was to solve problems in calculus. When he was not meditating or worshipping, he will solve problems in calculus. He once gave a beautiful definition. Space is the distance between two objects. Time is the distance between two thoughts. There is a thought which arises, another thought which arises. The distance between them is what you call time. How do you know there is a space outside? Because of the body, inside and outside. If you have no body, you will not even have any concept of space. And if you had no mind, no thoughts, you will have no concept of time. That is what happens to you in deep sleep. When you sleep off totally, you have no concept of the body and no concept of mind, no thoughts arise, and therefore you have no idea of either space or time. So when you go to the rise above the mental level and go to the spiritual level, you do not even know that there is a mind which thinks and the body which has certain necessities. So saints have existed who have shown that one could live at the spiritual level and operate, if necessary, through the mind and the body. The mind and the body are only instruments which you use. Just like you use a pen to write something. Now we have digital pens and so many other accessories. Why I mention this is because there is a fundamental unity in existence. And human beings are highly dissatisfied if they do not discover this unity. Because I can't be isolating and cutting myself away from this unity of existence and remaining as a fragmented unit in the universe. This quest of unity is very, very fundamental to humankind. Swami Vivekananda said, therefore, science is only a quest for unity. He said, chemistry will stop if we can find an element from which all the elements can be manufactured or understood. Physics will stop, it can find that energy of which all the various energies are only manifestations. So we always search for unity. So Vedanta searched for unity in a slightly different way by asking certain fundamental questions about life and existence. One simple question that Vedanta was asking, can you find a unity among all this disparity? Our bodies are different, our looks are different, our minds are different, our thoughts are different, our lifestyle is different. But in the midst of all these differences, is there a fundamental, non-different, unifying whole which subsumes all our differences and which removes these differences and shows a holistic vision to us? We say we are human beings. And we start by saying, I am from Bengal, somebody is from Uttar Pradesh, somebody is from some state. And then say, no, don't talk about my state and your state, we are all Indians. We always talk about it. My Bharatvasi ho, garv se bolo, my Bharatvasi ho. So you subsume all your little statehood, that you are from UP, somebody is from Andhra Pradesh, somebody is from Kerala, somebody is from Tamil Nadu, and somebody is from Chhattisgarh, and somebody is from Bengal, by saying that I am from India, I am an Indian. Now when you go abroad, you don't talk to anybody by saying I am from Chhattisgarh and Kerala, but you say I am from India. You are also from India and we are happy, we are together. Now, but you are from India, but what about people from America or England or France? Are they not one with you? How do you unite with them? Well, let's agree that we are human beings. That's one way in which you can unite everybody. When you talk about human beings, we are one human beings on a huge planet called the Earth. We have one common humanity. That's a common thing nowadays. There's the buzzword and a slogan. We have a common humanity. A dog or a cat peeps in and says, what about me? A dog or a cat is not a human being. But you have to live with dogs and cats and ants and animals and everybody. You can't wish away all those creatures which you see around. So it's, oh, you want to be accommodated? Let's do one thing. We expand it to living beings. And that's a reasonable proposition. A cat or a dog or an ant or a worm, all of them will come into that. Then the table will ask me, and the chair will ask me, the microphone will ask me, what about me? I am a living being? Oh, you are also there to be accommodated. Because we have to live in a world of non-living beings also. Then you say, all right, how to accommodate you? Let us expand this and say being. Isn't that a reasonable proposition? Yes. If you say being, then all the living beings, non-living beings, humans, animals, everybody is included. There's a large unity which is brought about by unification of the various apparently different elements together into one single whole called being. That's the largest generalization. So Swami Vivekananda therefore said, human beings, human minds always tend to generalize. And he said, our sages and the rishis of old were great generalizers. They made very bold generalizations. And the tremendously bold generalization made them to come to the conclusion that being includes everything in the universe. Obviously, you will agree that this is a very huge generalization, being. In Sanskrit, this is called Sat. Sat means to be. So what is the nature of reality? Nature of reality is Sat Swarupa or Sat, beingness. So what is your real nature? My real nature is just pure being. It is called Sat. In Sanskrit, it is also called Asti. Asti means it exists. In English, we call it existence with a capital E, to show that it is not that some object exists. It is not the existence of an object, but pure abstract existence. This table exists, this chair exists, this microphone exists, I exist, you exist, this dog exists, the plant exists, everything is existence. Everything is existing. Now, rather than saying each of them separately as existing, I will take existence apart, existence with a capital E bracket, stocks and stones and animals and plants and human beings plus the whole universe, all the things in the universe, bracket close. So you can think of the whole thing as generalized as being. There is an abstract supreme beingness or existence on which the various elements and various objects are superimposed. As it were the ocean of existence, and where several waves and bubbles are constantly rising and falling. This ocean of existence is what is called Sat, what is called Asti. So Asti is the fundamental nature of the reality. This is very obviously, you can intuit this and realize this by a very simple logic which I gave. This is not philosophy or religion or metaphysics. This is obviously when you go in search of unity, in quest of unity, you have to stop at existence. Pure existence which can be abstracted from existences of individuals and particulars. From the particular, you go to the general. From general, you go to the more general. The more general, you go to the most general, which is the universal. This is how human knowledge has always proceeded, even in the case of science. What does science do? It takes a particular event. It doesn't look at the event as an isolated occurrence, but tries to relate it to a universal principle of which this particular occurrence is an example and an illustration. Take the famous example of Newton's falling apple, which we studied in school. Newton was sitting there and suddenly an apple fell. We would have taken the apple and we had eaten that apple and come home. But Newton was made of a different stuff. He said, why is the apple falling down? Then he saw a stone was falling. Oh, stone is also falling. He saw everything is falling to the ground. Why is it that things are falling to the ground? So the falling of an apple, according to Newton, was not an isolated occurrence apart from the various occurrences, but it is an illustration or an example of a universal principle of falling. And he went to generalized and more generalized and most generalized proposition called the universal law of gravitation. As I said, that was slightly modified by Einstein later on by saying it is not the property of either the apple or the universe, of the earth, but the property of the entire space-time structure, which itself is curved. I mentioned Eddington's book yesterday, Nature of the Physical World. It's a beautiful chapter on gravitation, in which he says, Newton saw the apple falling down. Why is the apple falling down? He said there should be some mysterious tug which the earth is exercising on this, it is falling down. Now what would the apple say? Look at the apple's frame of reference. Newton's frame of reference, he saw the apple is falling down. The apple is looking at Newton and seeing Newton is coming up. Obviously, because you look at the frame of reference. From the apple's frame, Newton is coming up. The apple would have thought, how is it that Newton is coming up? He should know a little of physics, and it knows, but Newton is standing on the ground, and continuously all the various particles of the earth are constantly bombarding his soles of his feet. He is acting on the earth, so reaction of the earth to his body, and this reaction will give him an acceleration which is equal to the force divided with the mass of Newton, and because of the acceleration is moving up, apple is satisfied. But Newton looks at apple and is not satisfied because he does not see any force acting on that poor apple. So he has to invent a force by which apple is being brought down. So he founded a universal law of gravitation from that one particular occurrence of the apple falling. So what was happening here? What was happening was very simple. He did not look at that phenomenon of the falling apple as an isolated, fragmented, independent occurrence, but was referring to the most general law of gravitation, of which this particular occurrence was only an illustration or an example. Which means that all of science has proceeded by trying to find out a general law of which various occurrences can be thought of as individual examples. This is the search for unity, which is accomplished through unification of various occurrences, through referring them to more general, and the most general, which is the universal. This has happened in all fields of knowledge in science. So in Vedanta, exactly the same thing happens. Vedanta says, why do you think of people as independently existing? There is a huge ocean of existence, an abstract existence, of which the existences of all these various objects, human beings, living beings, animals, plants, subhuman beings, non-living beings, all of them form particular examples of existence. So you now realize the reality is existence, Sat. Now Vedanta asks the question, how do you know that there is a Sat? The Sat Swarupa, the existence, how does it reveal itself? Is it necessary that some other object is necessary to reveal this object? We have lights in this room. If there is no light to reveal these objects in this room, we will not be able to see the objects of this room. So there is a light which is necessary to reveal these objects. But now, this existence, does it require anything else apart from this to reveal it? If you say there is a necessity of an existence apart from this which will reveal it, then there should be something apart from this existence which is not true. Because everything is subsumed in this huge one ocean of existence. Because all that you see, all that you can realize is all part of this existence. There can't be anything apart from this, and therefore you have to per se logically conclude that this existence does not require anything else apart from it to reveal it. So you call this as self-revealing. It exists, and simultaneously with it, it is constantly revealing itself. In Sanskrit, we call it Swayam Prakasha. Prakasha is revealing, Swayam means by itself it is revealing, self-revealing. It does not require anything else apart from this to reveal itself. So this self-revealing characteristic of the Sat is called Chit. Chit is self-revelation. Chit has been translated as knowledge, but the difficulty of knowledge is you always think of knowledge, as I told you yesterday, as something apart from you, as known. There is a known, Gyeya Padartha, and I am the knower, the Gyata, and there is a knowledge in between. So knowledge always involves the knower and the known and the knowledge which is going in between. So this knowledge is not that kind of knowledge where there is a difference between the knower and the known. There is no triputi, there is no division. It is just pure knowledge. So to explain that, we put a capital K. What can poor English do? The English language is not suited to explain some of these very subtle nuances of the inner life, because Sanskrit has been developed to describe these things in a very big way. Just like English and German have been developed to explain various concepts of science. Sanskrit is very badly equipped to describe various concepts of science. If you want to describe an atom, only one paramanu, anu, only words are used. But 100,000 words are there in English language, particularly in German language, to describe various nuances. So each language has been developed to describe certain ideas. So in Sanskrit, to describe the mental phenomena, describe the inner phenomena, the spiritual phenomena, so many different words are used. Mind, one common word which you used in English. In English, if you say mind, what do you mean by mind? Is it manas? Is it buddhi? Is it antakarana? Is it chitta? So many words are there to describe it. This mind is not one simple entity. There are so many subtle nuances. Suppose intelligence, one word which is used in English. What is intelligence? You mean the dhi, you mean the buddhi, you mean shraddha, you mean pragya. So many words are there in Sanskrit to describe the subtle nuances of intelligence. Now to describe this chit, we use knowledge with a capital K, meaning this knowledge is just pure knowledge. They add the word pure as if there is impure knowledge and pure knowledge. Because you can't explain it in either way. It's just pure knowledge. It is knowledge, it is not knowledge of something, but it's just pure knowledge per se. Call it Swayam Prakasha. So the Sat Swarupa, which is awareness, which is existence, Chit Swarupa, which is awareness or pure knowledge, is the most natural characteristic of Sat. Sat, existence, most spontaneously and naturally reveals itself. It is a self-revealing something. Now, awareness of this existence, really thinking anything, particularly engaged in any activity, mental or physical activity, or just sitting there and just looking at yourself, and you are just aware I am sitting here. That the pure awareness of your being there, of existence, gives you great joy. That joy doesn't come from outside, but comes from a subtle, deep awareness of your own existence. Existence has a quality of awareness which is conjoined with it, and the awareness of this existence has a quality of engendering tremendous joy. This is called Ananda. And therefore, the nature of reality, according to Vedanta, approximately even then, is Sat, Chit, Ananda. We call it Sat-Chit-Ananda Swarupa. Very famous, everybody has heard about this word. Sat, Chit, Ananda. So this comes very logically and very rationally derived by a process of quest of unity through a process of unification. Suppose you ask, why do you need all this unification? I am very happy with myself. I don't care for all this. You need not care, but a human mind cannot stop without finding unity. Because you have to somehow ask the question how I am related to the entire universe. Unless you feel and realize your unity with all the existence, all of knowledge and all of Ananda, you will never be achieving your goal of complete fulfillment in life. We feel so much of unhappiness and sorrow which may not have a cause. There are two kinds of sorrow. One is the sorrow which has a cause. How are you? I am not very happy. Why? There is a death in the family. Oh, is it so? I am so unhappy. There is a cause. Why are you so unhappy? Suddenly the Sensex fell down and I lost my interest. Your bank balance has gone down suddenly and you are unhappy. What happened to you? Oh, my son is not studying well. You are unhappy. So you are unhappy because of so many causes, external. But there is a kind of unhappiness which comes to all of us, however enlightened you may be, in which you are unhappy for no reason. You are sitting there, how are you? I am not feeling very happy. What happened? Nothing happened, but just like that I am not feeling very happy. Every one of us feels that some point or the other. This is called existential sorrow. There is a philosophy called existentialism. Most of you must have been the German philosophy, Kierkegaard and Paul Sartre and so many philosophers are. From that came the humanism of Albert Camus and all that. So they said there is a fundamental sorrow in human life. They call it angst, A-N-G-S-T. Angst is a deep-rooted sorrow, ennui, depression, unhappiness, which you do not know what. Why it comes you do not know. This came to Gautam Buddha. Gautam Buddha everything in the world to make him happy. But suddenly he felt unhappy because he did not know why. Because so much of suffering outside. Somebody is suffering, what is that to me? So look at the heart of Gautam Buddha. He saw so much of suffering. You know the famous story of Gautam Buddha. Why was he affected by somebody else's sorrow? Because that the other man is me. He felt some kind of unity with mankind. Why is it we talk about humanism? We should see that all human beings should be happy. I am happy, why should I worry about whether the other man is happy or not? No. There is a fundamental philosophical principle that you can't be happy unless everybody else is happy. This is not even not grace. This is not charity. This is not their showing compassion. It is a psychological necessity of the human mind to find out the unity of mankind and therefore realize and feel that you just can't be happy unless everybody else around you is equally happy. This is what is called globalization. In a globalized world, everyone's sorrow will affect everybody else. India can't be happy unless all the neighbors around us are equally happy. There is some unhappiness somewhere and immediately we will be affected. How global economy is now affecting everybody. Somewhere something happens in a distant place which is 15,000 kilometers away and then immediately everybody feels the pinch. Why? Because the whole thing is being interrelated. So you can't be happy unless everybody is happy. And therefore, if I want to be happy, one of the fundamental conditions is that I should ensure that everybody else around me is also equally happy. That is the psychological and philosophical and scientific explanation for being unselfish. Unselfish is not a charity, it's not a grace that you are showing to everybody. Oh, I shall be unselfish and sacrifice. It is a psychological necessity that you have to pass through. Nature will not allow you to be selfish and be happy at the same time. This is a fundamental law of nature. I will be intensely selfish, shut my door and enjoy everything myself. Nature will put her hands on your throat, give you a tight slap on the cheek and then snatch away everything from you. Swami Vivekananda said very powerfully, man wants to hold with clenched fists, I will not give anything away. Nature will put her hands upon his throat and makes the fists open. So give gladly, give willingly. You can't anymore. This is a law of nature. So people who practice selfishness in a very enlightened way by being unselfish are the people who are most happy. So it's a beautiful Sanskrit verse. Parartha eva yasya shartha sopuman agranihi. My swartha, my selfishness is my unselfishness. That I want to be selfless itself is my selfishness. Some of the latest trends in psychology, they call it enlightened selfishness. You be selfish in an enlightened way by knowing that you can't be selfish by isolating yourself away and not caring for the happiness of everybody around you. One simple story is always told about this. There is a farmer who had a small piece of beautiful land which he cultivated very well. So he was using very expensive seeds in his farm and producing great results. What he did was, he started distributing these expensive seeds to everybody around him. Somebody called him and said, "You are a fool. You use expensive seeds in your farm. Why is it that you are distributing this to everybody?" Said, "My man, don't be so unselfish." Then he smiled and said, "Sir, I am doing it because of selfishness." I said, "How?" "If I use expensive seeds in my farm, and all the farmers around me use very bad, inexpensive seeds, the chances are the birds will pick out the seeds and put it on my farm. And therefore, I am going to suffer. So I ensure that all the people around me also use equally expensive seeds so that my farm may be saved." This is exactly what is happening to the globalized world now. Everybody is on tenterhooks everywhere. They want to make peace. They want to have bilateral issues. They want to discuss, go for negotiations. Let us not go for fight. Because fighting does not solve any problem now. Dr. Radhakrishnan said years ago, in the 60s, modern war is only mass suicide. What do you achieve finally? Both the parties die, that's all. Albert Einstein was asked a very simple question by somebody. What kind of weapons may be used in the Third World War? Einstein thought for a while and said, "I do not exactly know what kinds of weapons will be used in the Third World War, but I can sure tell you what kinds of weapons will be used in the Fourth World War." I said, "What is that?" "Stones, bows and arrows." Because the entire civilization would have been wiped out and then we'll start again from the Stone Age. Everybody has now realized. All the countries are now realizing more and more. They may talk about all this, but they know from their heart of hearts, fighting doesn't help us anymore. Swami Vivekananda talked about it. On the last day of the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, September 1893, he ended his historic address by the following words: "Upon the banner of every religion will soon be written, in spite of resistance, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace and not dissension." We can't have it anymore. We have to find out some way by which we can come together. So everybody is now worried about how we can come together through quest of unity, through unification. So this existentialism of Paul Sartre and Kierkegaard and others, this says there is a deep-rooted sorrow in the human heart, which is not solvable. You can't solve it in any way. So what do? Commit suicide. It's a philosophy. Vedanta says it is true that you have a deep-rooted angst within you. That is because you feel yourself isolated. The greatest sorrow that comes to a human being, or any being for that matter, living or non-living, is when one feels isolated. You know what is the punishment that they give to the most hardened criminals? Solitary confinement. You confine him alone for years upon years, he withers and dies. Without sharing of love, sharing of affection, sharing of things, you can't live. You need to share. What is the most important urge in the human heart has been a question asked in psychology for several decades and centuries. Freud said the most fundamental urge is the manifestation of the libido. Many people said, Viktor Frankl, he said the quest for a meaning in life is a fundamental urge. Adler said the thirst for power to control people. So many psychologists came out with so many things. Recently I was thinking about this question very seriously when I found that India with 1.2 billion people, some of them unable to eat well, some of them unable to clothe themselves well, they don't have a dwelling. The barber and the man in the street, the person, the rag picker in the streets of Calcutta and the streets of various cities, people picking up rags and not able to eat properly 2 times in a day, they have a double SIM mobile. It is true. I asked somebody, how is it that you are using a double SIM mobile but are unable to eat? What keeps me connected? I can talk to my parents, I can talk to my children, I can talk. Which means what? Food and daily necessities of living, even they take a back seat when it comes to getting connected to people. So from there, I myself came out with a formula of what is the most important urge is to share, to communicate. To be able to share and communicate with others is one of the most important urges in the human mind. So Ramakrishna calls it as the Guru Bhava. Guru Bhava means to share and to tell people. You know something, you immediately want to communicate with somebody else. If you are asked not to speak to anybody, you will die. Somehow you want to show, you want to share, you want to say something. Those of some of the people observe the Mauna Vrata, they will observe silence, but they keep on showing gestures and writing down. Somehow you want to share and pour. Pouring one's heart out is the most basic necessity of every living being, even an animal or a plant. I was telling you the story of a mosquito yesterday, how this little mosquito is wanting to share what it has received to its family and young ones. So this is the most fundamental urge which comes philosophically from interconnectedness, which is based upon one unity of existence. The unity of existence philosophy, which once again springs from a fantastic idea both in science as well as in Vedanta, which is called the unity of the microcosm and the macrocosm. All of you know the micro and the macro equations. The micro is a very, very small, tiny thing, small dimension. In terms of physical science, it would mean the atom, the subatomic particles, etc. You probe deeper and deeper into smaller and smaller and smaller things in the universe. The macrocosm is the vast. The planets and the nebulae and the stars, the celestial bodies, the infinite space outside, these are the macrocosm. Now, science has realized, and Vedanta realized it long, long ago, that the microcosm and the macrocosm are built on the same plan. There is a fundamental unity between the micro and the macro. There is an equilibrium between the micro and the macro, and this equilibrium is not a static equilibrium but a dynamic equilibrium. All of you know the Lee-Hartley principle and the law of mass action. Chemical engineers and chemistry people will know how there is a dynamic equilibrium between two sets of reactions. The micro and the macro are in equilibrium not through staticism but through dynamism. Continuous exchange, this is exchanging and that is also coming back. So the realization of the dynamical equilibrium of the microcosm and the macrocosm is a fundamental unity which dawns upon you, which if this governs your entire living as a philosophical principle, you will be the happiest person. Because you will feel yourself connected to the entire universe. You may be sitting here, your body is a microcosm, the entire objective universe outside is a macrocosm. Your mind is a microcosm, all the minds in the universe are the macrocosm. Your spirit is the microcosm, and the universal spirit of which all the spirits are parts is the macrocosm. So if you can somehow connect yourself psychologically and spiritually to all the various parts of the entire universe, you will never feel isolated, you will never feel lonely. The greatest disease which is plaguing psychologically the entire world is loneliness, isolation, depression. Because you feel lonely. You feel lonely because you want to cut yourself away through selfishness. The I and the me is what cuts you away. So remove the barrier of the I and me and connect yourself to the entire universe. That's why the mobile phones advertise, stay connected, duniya muthi mein. There's a great philosophy in that. Somehow whenever I see anything, I always read some philosophy into it. The entire universe is at your command, and always stay connected psychologically with the entire universe. One simple practice is given in Vedanta. You sit here, just I was chanting a beautiful mantra at the beginning, Dev Shanti, Antariksham Shanti, Prithvi Shanti, Apas Shanti, Oshadaya Shanti, Vanaspataya Shanti, Vishve Deva Shanti. Let there be peace everywhere. Peace on the earth, peace on the oceans, peace on the waters, peace in the interstellar space, peace in the celestial heavens, peace on the earth, peace in me, peace on everybody. That means I somehow want to connect to everybody through a wave of peace. You can try this. Just early in the morning when you get up, sit in your bed for a few minutes. Sit and send waves of peace and love and harmony to the east and the west and the north and the south of the entire universe. Think of those unknown, invisible faces in the entire universe whom you will never see perhaps. They are living somewhere in France or America or England or somewhere. The plants and the animals and human beings. Send waves of love to them and tell them, you are my brother, you are my sister. I exist because you exist in this planetary universe. You can't be isolated. This constant exchange, the dynamic equilibrium, is what the ancient system of Vedanta called yajna. Yajna is a sacrifice. We put ghee and then swaha, swaha, swaha. The idea is I'm constantly sacrificing to the cosmic being. What I have, my body, my mind, my talent, my thought, I'm sacrificing constantly. That means every act which you do in life can be thought of and converted as a kind of sacrifice or yajna. The Gita, 3rd chapter and the 4th chapter. Those of you who are interested, please do see. He talks elaborately of everything as an act of yajna. When you put food in your mouth and it goes to the stomach and is digested, it's a kind of act of sacrifice in which you are pouring oblation into the fire which is within your stomach. The fire is the metabolistic activities. You know there is an exothermic reaction which is happening when you eat. So you are only feeding this Agni, which is called the Jatharagni. The Bhagavan says in the Gita, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashrita Pranapana Samayukta Pacham Yannam Chaturvidham. I remaining as the fire and the heat in the stomach of everybody, I digest the food. You believe in a personal God, you don't believe in a personal God. This is a fundamental chemical reaction which is taking place every day. It's an exothermic reaction, and you put some, and immediately so much of heat is generated. Oh, I'm feeling upset in the stomach. Oh, so much of heat. What is that heat? That heat is a metabolistic activity which is constantly happening when you pour food into it. So there is somebody who is constantly generating heat in your body so that your body can maintain its temperature. So these are activities of nature which you see, perceive every day. And therefore, the yajna which you actually go through every day is an act of constant sacrifice of yourself into the cosmic, the macrocosm into the macrocosm. When I am speaking to you, the words which I speak enter into your ear, and then they are interpreted by the brain and you understand what I am saying. So this is an act of yajna. My words are poured as oblation into the fire of your ear and they get interpreted by you. This is an act of yajna. So every activity that you do, every thought that you think can be interpreted as a cosmic yajna. And the Vedanta says that the Supreme Being himself sacrificed his own self to become all this. That's an act of sacrifice. Every activity in the universe is an act of sacrifice. And no human being can live without sacrificing. You have to sacrifice. The mother sacrifices for the children, and the parents sacrifice for everybody, and then you have to sacrifice at every point. If you do it gladly, willingly, you will be happy. If you do it grudgingly, and you will be given a tight slap on the cheek and forced to do it. Sacrifice is the law of the universe. Albert Einstein once said, 100 times a day I remind myself that my inner and outer life depends on the labors of other men, living and dead, and that I should give in the same measure as I have received and am still receiving. I am constantly receiving from the universe, receiving air, receiving light, receiving food, receiving attention, receiving these clothes. Everything that I am receiving from the universe has been made by somebody else. I didn't make this microphone, I didn't create this table, I didn't create this hall. Somebody has done it for us and we are enjoying all the benefits. When I take food, sit there and hot food is served there. I order for a hot cup of coffee, somebody serves it to you. Did I make that coffee? Did I serve this food? How many hundreds of invisible faces have participated in the whole chain of services? Somebody has harvested there, somebody has taken out that harvest, somebody has packed it, somebody has marketed it, somebody has brought it, somebody has cooked it, and somebody is serving you there. When you are eating it and feeling satisfied and happy, and your hunger is appeased, why don't you raise your heart in grateful prayer and say, "Oh Lord, the infinite number of faces who have been serving me, unasked, unknown, thanks." Can't you say this? Are we so ungrateful? This is prayer, this is meditation, this is religion, this is Vedanta. Vedanta is a very, very simple act which you perform every day when you realize you are connected with the whole universe. Every moment I should realize my life is depending on the life of everybody else. Everybody else in the universe is contributing their bit. When I walk over grass, I should be grateful to that grass for giving me oxygen. All this plantation around me, this greenery, this grass and the plants, they are giving me oxygen so that I can live, and they are taking away the carbon dioxide which I am exhaling so that we can be safe. So why don't you, when you walk around and then look at the plants and the grass, why don't you fold your hands inwardly and bow your heads in reverence and gratefulness and say, "Oh grass, oh plant, oh this small piece of greenery, thank you for making me live. Tairdatta napradayebhyo yobhungtes tena eva saha." Who is a thief? You have stolen away something from nature and you are not giving back to it. So this kind of a unity which you find in all the beings of which you are a part, this realization psychologically, you may not realize the supreme God or spirituality. I am not talking about all that religion. A simple act of perception of you are interconnected with the entire cosmos. You can see this exemplified in most of the poets. You read Rabindranath, you read Shelley, you read Wordsworth, you read Jayashankar Prasad, you read Mahadevi Verma, you read most of the poets in any language. You will see how they have felt the pulsation of the universal in themselves. When you are connected with the entire universe, and then you will see then the great Himalayas on the one side, the great oceans on the other side, the Ganges which is flowing. Why do we worship the Ganges? Ganga. Because apart from the religious aspect to it, it is making you and I live. If Ganges were not there, we spoil the Ganges unnecessarily through exploitation. Ganges is willing to give year after year, century after century, the purest of water which we consume. So you say, "Oh Ganges, thank you for giving me water. Put some flower," symbolically. The sun is giving you so much of energy and heat. Physics says if the sun goes out for a few seconds, the world will simply go to pieces. Total solar eclipse, those of you who have experienced it in your life, those few microseconds, the world becomes so cold. You can't live anymore if it continues for a few minutes. The sun is giving you so much of light and so much of heat, no charges. How much they charge for this electricity? Sun is giving you how many billions of megawatts every day, free. It doesn't say, "I gave you so much of electricity yesterday, the bill comes to you from sun." No. Free. Nature doesn't charge anything for the bounty which it gives, unasked and free. Only nature says, "My son, my child, I am giving you because you are my children, but don't exploit me." When we exploit nature, nature has its own way of taking revenge, which is known as The Greek philosophers called it the nemesis of nature. When you exploit nature, nature will come back and catch you, and there will be a nemesis, which is happening today in the form of global warming, in the form of ecological crisis, in the form of 100,000 evils which we are now facing. And we have huge conferences, once again air-conditioned halls, cutting all the sun out. The modern civilization will not allow sun to enter any room. Bright sun is outside, and we will close all the windows and put on so many lights. So what a peculiar civilization we have created. We are cutting ourselves from nature. Nature is giving us so much. We say, don't waste water. How much of water nature is wasting through the waterfall? When I was a child, my mother used to say, hey, don't waste water. Water is very precious. I said, Mummy, why is God wasting so much of water there? The waterfall is continuously falling in torrents. No takers. How many people take that water? But nature says, you are my child, I'll give you billions of gallons of water, free, unasked. Nature is wasteful, nature is bountiful, and nature is so blissful. Only you have to connect yourself with nature and find a unity of existence through unification of all the various forces of nature. You are connected with the entire universe. You can't live without unification. So the microcosm-macrocosm equation, through dynamic equilibrium, the oneness which is realizable through the pursuit of science, conviction you get through science, and the realization you get through inward contemplation in Vedanta, will give you a very total different picture. You can practice this for 6 months and you see your health will improve, your ideas will improve, and your thoughts will improve, and you can get all the ideas from nature. Suppose you are stuck in some kind of research and unable to proceed. You do not know what is the next step. Make your mind calm, open your mind to nature. So what is your secret? Come on, tell me tomorrow. Nature reveals. Nature is very kind. Nature is very compassionate because we are children of nature, the mother nature. Only we do not know how to connect. The my and me, I, this little ego blocks everything and you can't proceed further. So this is a great realization of the rishis who got themselves connected everywhere. You can see how they sang songs with great bliss. Madhuvata ritayate madhuksharanti sindava madhve irnas tantoshadhi madhumakta nitoshasi madhumatparthi vagum rajah madhudyaurastunav pita madhumanno vanaspatir madhumagum astu surya madhvir gavo bhavantunah om madhu om madhu om madhu. It's a great statement in the Vedas. Madhu means bliss, happiness. Everywhere there is bliss and bliss and bliss and happiness. The winds are blowing in bliss. All the cows are giving us bliss. The waters are giving us bliss. The entire nature is blissful. The sun is full of bliss. The earth is full of bliss. Every particle of the earth is throwing bliss upon us. And let there be bliss and joy and happiness everywhere. What a beautiful life they lived, connecting themselves with nature from the entire universe. So we should go back to this kind of thought. All the modern civilization and all that we will keep, but on the basis of a world vision, a Weltanschauung, in which we know that we are connected with the entire universe in a happy, blissful, joyous fashion by realizing the unity of the microcosm and the macrocosm through dynamic equilibrium. Once this vision opens up, then you will see the entire life is one of blissfulness. And your health will improve, your ideas will improve, and your studies will improve, and all that you know in nature will come to you unasked. Visions will open up, and you will see newer and newer things whenever you walk, whenever you see. You will be connected to the entire universe. When you walk on a road and see the dust particles, dust is not a bad thing. We say it's full of dust. You know the valley of dust? Physics says the dust particles form the nucleus of supersaturated vapor. By forming water drops around these dust particles as nucleus, you get rains. If there is no dust in the universe, we'll have no rains. and we will die in 2 days. So when there is a dust, you bow down before that, oh dust, you are giving me rains. And because of rains, I am surviving. I am not saying you should fill up with dust. But what I am trying to say, change the vision. We keep on criticizing everything as useless. Nothing in the universe is useless. If something in the universe is absolutely useless, nature wouldn't keep it. Nature has kept everything for serving a certain purpose. There is a principle of uniqueness in nature which is connected to the principle of unification and unity. Every creature, every particle in the universe is unique. Each one of us is unique. There is a fundamental uniqueness we should remember. All of us are unique creations of nature. You should teach your children and teach yourselves that I am a unique human being, and therefore I have a purpose in life. I have something to contribute to the life and existence. You know the famous story, a poem which we read long ago in schools. There is a small squirrel which thought itself absolutely useless. When it went to a mountain, the mountain is so big, carrying huge forests, and the mountain looked at the squirrel and said, "You little useless fellow, what can you do? You see, look at me." Then the squirrel quietly answered. The last few lines of that poem, which I remember, I read it about 50 years ago. "Talents differ, all is well and wisely put. If I cannot carry forests on my back, neither can you crack a nut." God has given me that power to crack a nut, which you cannot do. God has given you that extraordinary capacity to carry so many forests. I bow down to you, but you should also bow down to me for having this capacity which you do not have. You know the Panchatantra story of the friendship between a lion and a mouse, famous story. A lion became friendly with a small mouse. Everybody told the lion, "Arey, this is useless little creature, you are so big, you can roar, you are so powerful, what can this mouse do?" But the lion somehow said, no, this mouse is a little darling, I like him. So one day the lion was caught in a net. It was roaring and roaring, couldn't come out. The mouse heard the distress call of its best friend, came running, entered through the net, went on biting the net through its small teeth, till the net slowly gave way, and the lion simply tore itself apart from the net, came out and was embracing the mouse. So that capacity to be able to cut the net is endowed with that little mouse and not with the lion. Every one particle in the universe has a unique contribution to make. Teach your children. Don't be depressed. Everybody need not be the first in the class. Everybody need not achieve anything big. But you have a specific, a definite contribution to make in this universe which nobody else can. This uniqueness principle is the basis of many of the discoveries in science. One example I can give you, I was talking about the Pauli's exclusion principle. There is an extraordinary principle in atomic physics which says no two electrons in the atom will be identical with respect to all the quantum numbers. Which means if two electrons have identical quantum numbers, one of them will be excluded from the constitution of the atom. What does that mean? Philosophically, every one particle in the universe has to be unique. Nature will not allow two things will be exactly the same. How many hundreds of thousands of millions of patterns nature has thrown up? These 10 fingers which we have, each is unique. Of the billions of people in the universe, nature has produced such billions of varieties of fingerprints. Each one is unique. That's why sometimes to show victory, we show fingerprint. You see, this is unique. Nobody has this. None of the creatures in the entire universe has a fingerprint which I have. So I am a unique creature of the universe. I am a unique child of nature. I have something to contribute. This uniqueness of nature is what you have to appreciate, understand, realize, respect. That's called human dignity. We talk about human rights and human dignity. The human dignity is based on the idea of uniqueness of nature. We have a unique thing in nature which is constantly manifesting itself through ever so many forms in you. This uniqueness. For example, you have a gardener who is creating a rose bed. 10 rose plants have come. He puts these rose plants in the various beds, prepares the soil in the same way, gives the same kind of affection and love to each of these plants, gives them same amount of water, same amount of manure, same exposure to sunlight. Do you mean to say each of these plants will exactly grow in the same way and give a rose flower on the same day, at the same hour? No. Why? There is a principle of uniqueness in nature, which we call the antaryamin, or the indwelling controller within the plant, which will absorb what you offer it in its own unique way. The water that you give, the manure which you offer, each plant will accept what it needs, rejects what it does not need, assimilate what it has accepted, and transform itself into a beautiful rose plant after having assimilated what it needed. This happens to each one of these plants separately, individually, uniquely. If it happens to a plant, how much more to human beings? I am talking to so many of you. Each one of you, the antaryami which is within you, will accept what I say in its own unique way, reject what it doesn't want, assimilate what the antaryami has accepted, and transform yourself into a beautiful human being or a divine being. So accept and realize the uniqueness of each person. So when you meet anybody, a plant or an animal or a dog or a cat and a human being, a child, remember there is a unique principle which is operating, and respect it with dignity. Oh child, oh unique antaryami within you, I am offering this to you humbly, worshipfully. You accept what you want, reject what you do not want. Having accepted, assimilate what you have accepted and transform yourself. This is respect for human dignity. This is democracy. This is humanism. This is human rights. Whole thing is based on the principle of uniqueness of nature. This goes down to the Vedanta and to science of human uniqueness and the science of unity with the microcosm and the macrocosm. If you can practice this in everyday life, your whole life will change. Your individual life will be one of joy. Your collective life, interacting with everybody, your interpersonal relationship is one of great respect and joy. Your family will be thriving with happiness. Your whole community will be full of bliss and joy. May this joy come to all of us. This is my prayer. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you so much. We can have just a few minutes of questions. I have to start within about 10 minutes. If everybody is full and happy, let us now dissolve. Yeah. Please, please.
I think, in my opinion, it's a controversial question.
Please, please. Nothing in the universe is controversial. Nature has no now that's another important thing. Nature has no contradiction in it. Human mind has contradiction within it. Say carbon dioxide and oxygen are contradictory natures according to us. But plant and man together, there is no contradiction. Yes, please.
My question is related to a pseudoscience subject, discipline called astrology. I was born on a certain day, on a certain hour, a certain second, and many other children must have been born on the same day, same hour, same second. We all do not have the same properties or the same career paths. So, in a Vedantic philosophical angle, does astrology stand any ground? That's my question.
You see, there are so many things in the world which we do not really know what it is like. Science also does not know many things. It gives some kind of a plausible explanation for many things. Perhaps this is this way. So the science of astrology, if it is a science at all, depends on so many kinds of data and statistics. Based on that, you guess this could be this way, that could be that way. Now there are so many exceptions. Life is too complex to be governed by simple rules actually. And therefore, for those of you, the difficulty with people like you are so much worried about people who believe in astrology because they are believing something which you should not believe in. Leave them alone. Unfortunately, we are so much philanthropic many times, we are worried about other people's sanity. Let us worry about our own sanity. If we believe in one, go ahead. If we don't believe in, don't worry. So keep it neutral. So Vedanta has no take on astrology. It simply says there could be certain observations based on which some generalizations are possible. And this generalization may not work in all places, could work in certain places. And therefore, let us not be governed by what the planners do, let us be governed by our own thought and actions. Very often we find an alibi for not doing certain things, blaming the star out there. Why is it that I am suffering? Because Shani did something to me that way. This is only an alibi. You find out what you can do now. So astrology is something which need not be brought in because it is something which we do not know about. So some people always look for some kind of explanation of a certain happening. Science explains it its own way, and Vedanta explains it in a different way, and so many different sciences explain it in so many ways. Doctors, for example, why are you having this fever? All kinds of tests have been performed, all the tests have been negative. Why is it that doctors say, I do not really know why he is feeling so much of feverish, all the tests have become negative. Then what is the answer? There is no answer. So they say there is a fever of unknown origin, for which you don't need a medical degree. But the answer is that we do not know many things. After some time the fever subsides. So when explanations are sought, when you can't find out a clear explanation, exhausted all possible explanations, you seek something which is supernatural and then try to invoke that. That is also, in a sense, incomplete. Or those who are satisfied with it, let them do. And somebody feels, oh, this is because of that particular graha or some planet, and then you do something and they feel well. If that faith can cure him, why not? So let him have his own faith and go in his own way. So Vedanta has no take on that. Yes. Not only that, now it is very easy to be born in a particular moment by cesarean operation. The parents now dictate, I want my child to be born, this is the best moment, come on, take him out. Now there is a theory, whether it is a natural birth alone which will govern by astrology or this kind of a birth. So these are all very tricky questions. The place of birth is considered very sacred. Ramakrishna was born in Kamarpukur. Oh, it's a very sacred place, we should have a temple. So I was funnily joking, the future avatars will solve these problems because they will be born in a nursing home or a hospital. Rama, when he comes again, or Ramakrishna, when he comes again, he will be born in a hospital, and therefore there is no question of mandir there. So I have to take away the whole temple and whole hospital and build a temple. So these things will naturally go by the growth of modern technology and science.
Which you have told that the knowledge of the awareness or the knowledge of the existence will give the joy. Is that
Awareness of existence gives you bliss. You know, Swami Vivekananda was dead against astrology. He gave an interesting story. There is a king who believed very much in astrology. An astrologer came and told the king, oh king, I know from your symptoms you will live only for 6 months. He became so terribly upset, went on worrying about it. He is getting emaciated, not able to take food, not able to sleep. He was actually dying while living. So the minister asked him, what has happened to you, king? No, he told me like that. Do you believe that? Then he told him, if you can disprove him, then I'll give you a great reward. But if you can't disprove, I'll cut off your head. Then the minister said, I'll prove it. Called the astrologer. What did you tell the king? In the open court. Said he will live only for 6 months. Are you sure? Yes, I have made my calculations. They're absolutely clear. How long are you going to live? Then he made some calculations. I will live for 20 years more. Immediately the minister took off his sword and cut off his head. And told the king, you see, he said he will live for 20 years. Now he is dead. What do you say for this? This is a story, of course, to prove that so many things can go wrong. You know what astrologers will do? If you say something goes wrong, oh, that is because there was some factor, something was seeing from somewhere else. I asked an astrologer, how do you people thrive? He said, don't tell anybody. What we do is, we make some predictions. If 100 people come to us, at least 10% will click by probability. Maybe 5% will click. Those 5% of people will tell 10 more people. So they will come, then I will throw something. From there 2% may click. Slowly our group expands, so we don't go beyond a point. So that group will always stick to us. There was an astrologer who was sending various kinds of, the gems, the Neel money and then Lal money and then so many kinds of various jewels and gems. He was sitting there in the street. You see, this is a blue jewel. This brings so much of prosperity. Whoever wears it, then he will be full of prosperity. You see this red jewel, this can bring you so much of wealth and so on. So this costs 100 rupees, but for your sake I will give you at 50 rupees. This costs 500 rupees, I will give you at 300 rupees. So very quickly he made money a few thousand rupees, and one fellow was constantly standing there not buying anything. When everybody left, he said, why are you not buying? See, I want to ask you one question. What is that? If each of these jewels and gems is so prosperous, and why are you sitting in the street selling all this? You have all of them with you. So this is one way of looking at it. I am not saying it is wrong or right. If somebody believes, but Swami Vivekananda said, don't believe in anything which makes you weak. If it gives you strength, then you believe it. You are constantly depending on something else and worried about, then for the exams also many people are worried. During the exam time, I have seen this Ganesh temple and the Shani temple, the full roaring business they make. And the most dangerous deity is Shani. Even Ganesha and Durga, they don't bother so much. Shani, they will go on Saturdays and do something there. And it is a faith which actually, if somebody really believes that it is, and that should be productive of strength. Never believe in anything which makes you weak, which makes you depressed. Life is so wonderful and beautiful. Nature has given so much of bounty to us. Why should we feel depressed? Thank you.
We are quite thankful to Swamiji for sparing his valuable time, and we have heard a lot about various aspects of the science and the Vedanta, which calls upon to look upon things in a more wonderful way, look upon things with more inquisitive, and the spirit of science is basically the inquisitive thing, the nature of questioning. So and that makes things much more interesting and joyful, and we can appreciate nature and cosmos and the entire life if we see this existence principle working, and that connects all of us together. So I hope that all this 2-day lecture series have benefited all of us, and it will give us a new insight to look into the life. So with this, I conclude today's session, and any one of you interested to be a part of Vivekananda Samiti, most welcome. So thank you all of you for your time.